So as we look at this first slide here, one of the problems at Brakebush and all companies right now is that companies are struggling to control healthcare costs and they're struggling also to protect their talent. So one of the things that I wanted to ask Dan about right now getting started is what was the problem that Brakebush was having in 2007?
In 2007, we were fully insured, and one of our big problems is we really didn't have a good understanding of where the cost increases were coming from, nor where our opportunities were. We had a good handle of what our occupational losses were, but not necessarily from our group health plan. We were seeing double-digit increases each year without a good handle on how are we going to start to control this.
Yeah, so I met Dan in 2007, and I was part of a private practice physical therapy company, and we had a solution called Solve Global, which is really designed to help companies with controlling musculoskeletal disorder costs and work comp, employee benefits, also with disability costs. And Dan and I started to have conversations about how we might be able to help Brakebush. So that was back in 2007. And one of the things in 2007 was that Dan mentioned the occupational health journey was where they saw an opportunity. So Dan, what intrigued you about the approach that we were talking about in 2007, and what issues were you having?
So on the occupational side, we had looked at a variety of different ways to try and control some of these musculoskeletal disorders, and most are familiar with some form of ergonomics, which can be quite expensive. And it really only attacks one particular area, and you have to either look at your claims history or look and do an evaluation and try and determine where these areas are.
As you were collaborating with each other, or you're working together, coming off of or being involved in a fully insured plan, how were you able to access enough data? How were you able to determine how deep this problem was, and then the ability to collaborate with your people, meaning to really get a message across that, hey, if you have a musculoskeletal disorder, that we have the ability to assist you in a different way? How did that happen in your collaboration with you and Matt?
There's a lot to unpack there. As far as getting a handle on where we were for our fully insured, simply we didn't have great data. We knew that on an occupational side, there we had great data. And so we knew intuitively that if we've got a problem occupationally, we also probably have a problem on our group health. So one of the goals there was, hey, if we can break even with our work comp, we know that our savings on the group health is going to be even more than what we see on work comp. So that's one of the ways we use to justify it. As far as getting across to the team members, it really came down to a comfort thing for them. You know, it's a strategy where you start to market it and you start to educate on what it can be, but until you get those first brave souls to try it out, and they have this great experience, and then they go back and report to the masses, that's when it really starts to gain a lot of traction.
The biggest nemesis has always been some level of education, getting people to see the vision, meaning getting people to see why does this matter to me? Meaning that I'm used to my traditional benefits plan. I'm used to it guiding. I'm really excited about your communication of how that happened and just the collaborative experience. So as we keep going, I think that's one of the huge messages for both other employers and brokers is what was that journey like is in this process.
So what we did is we went in, we put in our tools and our systems, and with our systems, we can find the individuals in a population that are having an issue. And then we can also find out what populations to focus on. So what we could do at Brakebush, we could say that your first shift, line 7 line workers have greatest risk right now for low back claims, and it's related to reaching. So we were able to reach out with population health interventions for that group. Now we were also able to find the individuals that were reporting issues. So that's what Dan was intrigued about. And then one of the things I was intrigued about with Brakebush is we're really looking for collaborative partners. I really think it's important that if you really want to be successful in your healthcare, it's about not finding vendors, it's about finding collaborators. And Brakebush was about taking care of their people. And they understood that the human capital was as important as the mechanical and the machines. And the waste and the medical spending is just not compatible with where they were going. So I was excited to work with Brakebush because of that. And one of the things that we did with launching the program is we told folks, we met with the employees and we said, our goal is to help you feel better at work and when you go home. We know you don't work we know you don't live to work, you work to live. And our goal is that you feel better when you're here and you feel better when you go home. And I think one of the things too that really hit me as we were doing this over the years is that we weren't focusing on musculoskeletal as a high cost health condition, looking at that downstream. We're looking at musculoskeletal and saying this has to be a part of our primary care strategy. And it was really a strategy around musculoskeletal primary care with relationships over a lifetime with folks, as well as population health management around musculoskeletal. And by developing those relationships and the trusted relationships, when we did have things that needed to go medical, and this is something that's kind of interesting, when we have musculoskeletal issues, 9 times out of 10, it's not a medical issue that's caused by a pathology that needs to be fixed. 9 times out of 10, the issue is a problem with the balance between a person's abilities and resources and the demands of tasks they're doing. And if we can rebalance that, we get the pain to go away. And now 9 times out of 10 that happens, but 1 out of 10, we need to refer that person. We need to refer them to the right medical procedure. And we were able then to, based on the trusted relationships, refer folks to the Center of Excellence for bundled procedures. And actually in 2018, I think that's when we started to have an orthopedist actually would come on site, and we would actually control the referrals that go to that orthopedist to make sure that we didn't get ortho consults when they weren't needed, but then to make sure we got the right ortho consult when it was needed.
You happen to be talking to a guy who's sitting here at 61 with one artificial knee and a arm wrestling argument with my orthopedist who I've known all my life and who's our daughters are best friends. And we argued over whether he should do the other one, and the other one is now stem cell. 11 injections, regrew tissue, and followed a different protocol. One knee was $85,000, the other one was $6,000. That's who you're talking to right now. Me, I went through that. So I also have a stem cell shoulder and or physical therapy on that shoulder to rehab it. Here's my question. In the process of what you're doing, how many, I get the savings that are incurred as a result of not having to do surgeries. Is your organization also then, from what you just stated, working collaboratively with the orthopods to do cash transactions through the plan, to do other creative work to help to navigate the right surgeries or to eliminate surgery altogether? Where are you actually incurring your savings, do you believe?
Let me touch on that and then let Dan touch on it. So a little bit of history. 20 years ago, we used to see something on MRI and we used to think it was pathologic. Now we realize that a lot of what we see on MRI is actually wrinkles on the inside. And what I mean by that is if I'm 51 years old now, and those folks that don't have any knee pain at 50 years old, if you look inside their knee, you will see degenerative meniscus tears in about 70% of the population that has no pain whatsoever. And when we hit the age of 60, half the population will have a rotator cuff tear, but will have full use of their arm. There's actually a study of pitchers, and they found 40% of pitchers that didn't have any shoulder pain had partial or full thickness rotator cuff tears, and they were able to keep pitching 5 years later. If we look at MRIs of the low back, I'm 80% of folks that are 50 have degenerative disc changes. So a lot of these pathological changes aren't pathology, they're age. So what happened is when we thought we needed to fix all those things, we were tremendously increasing the surgical costs. So what we do basically is we find out where do we have risk in the population, who's having issues, and how can we rebalance that person's physical capabilities with their task demands. And by doing that, we're able to keep those folks from needing to go to the surgeon 90% of the time. Now, when they do need to go, we make sure they go to the Center of Excellence. And Dan, you may want to touch on the Center of Excellence and how that's taken care of in the plan.
So, yeah, you talked about avoidance of surgery, and it really comes down to the provider. And are they one that is going to cut every time they see something on an image or not? Are they going to, say that this is a candidate for conservative care? And also controlling, getting them to that point. So when we were early on in our Center of Excellence journey, obviously we had people that were somewhere in their stage of care, potentially with another provider. And then we came along and said, hey, if you go and get a knee replacement at this particular provider, here's going to be your out-of-pocket cost. And it is so drastically much lower than traditional, where the person could save $3,000 on their knee replacement. So we had some people that had been told by their surgeon, hey, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and you need to have your surgery now. And so they were in the planning process of going through that replacement. And then we came in with our message of, hey, try this, you'll save some money. So they jumped over onto our side of Center of Excellence and started going to that provider, and that provider would come back and say, nope, you're not a surgical candidate at this time. Go back, do conservative for a while, come talk to me 6 months, a year, whatever it may be. And that was it. They were done. So instead of saying, well, we saved 20, 30, 40% of the surgery, we saved 100% because that surgeon is different than your other surgeon. Fast forward a little bit more as we get better with that. Now we bring the provider right on site. So now we've got physical therapy working together with the surgeon and determining, okay, when is it appropriate to do surgery? Okay, we've tried of all of these conservative cares. The next thing is a surgical consult to determine where we're going to go. And so now we don't see as many where afterwards we say, it probably wasn't a surgical candidate, because you've got that collaboration back and forth between the service providers right here on site.
This is interesting, and this just came out last this year. This was an article I read that was basically stated that 44% of Americans are avoiding healthcare because they're unsure of costs, and these folks have insurance. And in rural Wisconsin, which is where we are, we're seeing folks are low middle class oftentimes, and they're employed. But what they have at Brakebush, so Brakebush employs over 1,000 people in a community of how much, Dan? Is about 1,000 people in that community, I think.
Yeah, the closest town.
But what's really cool is the best healthcare around is found at Brakebush. And one thing that's just really cool, just a story that I have to share about this, is there was I'm one of the providers at Brakebush from time to time. I had a lady come in, talk with me. She came to Brakebush. She was a new employee. She was having discomfort in multiple areas, trying to tolerate her job. She recently was divorced. Her husband left her. She'd never worked before. She had 4 kids at home, and she didn't know where to turn, where to go. She started working at Brakebush, and we were able to help her with her work-related discomfort. And we were also able to connect her with other benefits, the behavioral health benefits that are there now, the primary care offering that's there now. We were able to connect her with all these things. And I'm convinced that if she was not at Brakebush, the outcome of her life would have been significantly more poor. And I was very concerned about her and just very excited about being a part of Brakebush, because it's really a part of changing lives and providing healthcare for people. It's one of the most rewarding days of my career, was seeing what happened with this one individual. I don't know